The genie? Oh,
Mhm.
the Shazam?
Shazam, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
it didn't happen.
That's
Sorry.
the one thing, though, that I don't understand.
Kazam happened.
Kazam happened with Shaq, but I don't
Right.
understand how collectively I don't buy it. I don't buy it, Eric. I don't see how we collectively mistook Sinbad for Shaq or Shaq for Sinbad. They don't
You
look
don't think
anything
you don't think the
alike.
power of suggestion could have been part of it, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you could be
I
right
don't know.
about that.
I don't know. I'm just
I'm just, I'm kidding, but I'm still gonna stand, even though I'm joking. I'm gonna stand by the fact that I'm not joking, and I'm gonna believe this little conspiracy in my mind
yeah.
that
Well, I
there
mean,
was, in
it's
fact,
cool. I
a
mean,
movie, a genie movie with Sinbad called Shazam,
wow.
like the
Welcome to
ATM machines.
Accelerativ Thrust, your source for misinformation.
Yes. Greetings, citizens of Earth. I'm Dan.
And I'm Eric.
Welcome to Accelerativ Thrust, where we discuss and review underground, experimental, and misinformation,
Mm-hmm.
with a focus on the Iowa misinformation music scene.
Yeah.
No,
Perfect.
the Midwest music scene.
Yeah.
Now, the misinformation comes from my mind, and I apologize if everyone is offended.
Yeah.
But
Where is it?
what?
Oh, your mind.
I don't know where it is. It's what's that Pixies song?
Debaser. That's the one we were thinking of.
I'm trying to remember the lyrics.
The lyrics have to do with being on a raft and fish following you around.
Okay, well that's where my mind is.
Yeah, I don't know why the lyrics are about that.
Does anyone know why any of Frank Black's lyrics are what they are?
Oh yeah, that's
I
a
mean,
good point.
he's got that slicing up eyeballs line.
Yeah, that's
Which,
about it. That's about a movie though.
oh, is it?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. What movie is it? Do you know what the movie is? What movie it is?
Let me think. It's an old movie. It is French. It is silent. Let me look it up. Un Shane Andalou, which means an Andalusian dog.
Hmm.
It's a Salvador Dali movie. And yeah, they totally slice up an eyeball.
Wow.
It's cool.
Yeah, that
And a
sounds
little
really cool.
spoiler, little behind the scenes, it's actually just a lamb's eyeball, not a human's. So
It's another living thing's eyeball.
it is actually a sweet ass movie. Like it is
You,
really something
I'm
interesting.
sure if it's by Salvador Dali, I'm sure that
Yeah.
it's freaking
Well, it
amazing.
says here on the internet, Louis Bunel, also Salvador Dali. Yeah, it's a really cool movie. You should all check it out. It's only 20 minutes long, so
Frank
what
Black
do you
was
got to
into some
lose?
Frank Black was into some obscure shit, sounds like.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, I don't know if that's considered obscure. I mean, I've never
I
heard of it.
I think as far as avant-garde silent film, it probably is somewhat well known. I don't know. It seems like that could be a genre that has many layers and lots
Mm.
of things to learn, I guess.
Yeah, kind of like the Eraserhead syndrome or something.
I wish I had that.
Yeah, me too.
That is one
Obscure
of my
but well
favorite
known.
movies.
That it
It's
is.
hilarious.
It is. It's visually just a trip.
You should watch that and just pretend it's a really dark comedy. It's really fun, and you'll be rolling on the floor laughing about it when they
I
bring out those little chickens.
Sure, just cut them up like regular chickens.
yeah, I remember. I remember
I'm
the
just
first time
watching it in my brain right now.
I know the first time I saw that movie. It was I had no idea what I was. Of course, I was like 14 years old or something.
Yeah,
14,
it's
15.
weird when you watch something weird and kind of I don't know, off-putting, if not outright offensive. And then you kind of want to share it with people, but then you're kind of nervous about it. Like I was
Right.
probably about the same age as you just said, about 14, 15 when I saw Eraserhead, and I tried to share it with my friends, and some of them reacted very negatively to it.
Yeah.
But I still do it. I honestly just did it last night. My friend Nick was over, and I showed him this internet animation movie called Where the Dead Go to Die, and no one listening should watch it because it is terrible.
I
And-
actually, me and my friend Brandon watched that.
Yeah, it's been out for about a decade, and I felt really bad for having shown it to him. I think it bothered him, and I felt terrible. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you find something you really enjoy, but it's also highly problematic and malicious in its intent, and you're ashamed of it, then you should just trust your shame and not share it with anyone.
Yeah, I learned that the hard way. Actually, that's a really good way to put it. Actually, because I learned the hard way that my interests very rarely are gonna align with the interests of other people, and I learned that. Okay, so the guitar player in my band, his sister really liked a song off of like the Mollusk or 12 Golden Country Greats. And we were at Ragged Records.
Yeah.
And they had a copy of The Pod.
Yeah.
And she picked it up because she's like, oh, I really like the song. I'm like, you're going to love it. Yeah, just like not thinking about the fact that like, okay, this is somebody who's only heard like the pretty side of Ween.
What's a ween?
Or at least the well-made.
Yeah, the well-made.
side.
Exactly. The well-made side of Ween. And she took it home and she like she called up Luke and she's like, what is wrong with your friend Dan? Like recommending this. And then freaking Luke is like, yeah, why did you tell my sister to buy the Pod as like her first album from Ween? And I said, I don't know. It was one of those like impulse recommendations where I'm just like, hey, I like it, so everyone else must.
Well, you know what they say. If you can't handle Ween at the Pod, you don't deserve Ween at the Mollusk.
Yeah. I've never heard that, but yes, I'll follow that.
I think I may have made it up, but I stand by it.
Okay, well, so that would explain why the they thing, what they say.
Oh yeah, they, right.
Yeah, they.
Anytime I'm about to make up some bullshit, I just say they say, and then I say the bullshit, and no one really ever calls me on it because they're like, well, they must say that.
Are they ever like they? Who's they?
And I'm like, I don't know, the internet. Look it up, dude.
Yeah, and of course
that's how I win every argument. Whatever, dude, just look it up, and then no one ever looks it up. So yeah, no, go for
it. So we got ourselves another local roundup.
Yeehaw!
You ain't from around here, are you, boy?
This is
okay.
Number 3.
This is number 3. We can't stop. This is becoming a They Might Be Giants podcast.
It is.
I don't want it to be. I mean, the thing is, I'm sure those exist somewhere, and I don't listen to them, and so I assume no one else does either.
You're doing a lot of assuming tonight.
I know. And you know what they say about assuming? It makes an asshole out of you and a dickhead out of me.
Is this another one of those internet things where like I'll just be like, hey, what are you talking about? And you're like, look it up on the internet.
I actually that I made up actually.
Oh. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Sweet.
Cool. All right.
Here we go.
So we're doing the local roundup again, and the first release that we're going to talk about is from this group out of Des Moines, Iowa, called Safe Space. and this is an album called Give Me an Eye. This band's bassist, Joey Denton, reached out to me and he listened to our local band review episodes and loved it and said, some really nice things about the podcast. And I just want to say thanks to Joey and Safe Space. What I'll say about it, it's definitely a mixture of metal and hip hop for sure. So I don't think it would be necessarily fair just to call it like a rap metal band, but I also think there's a lot of pretty cool stuff happening. I think it would be kind of fair to call it new metal a little bit, but I also think that there's some hardcore influence. I think the performance and production is really good. I think the singer does some pretty interesting stuff with his voice. He definitely has a really really well-rounded scream, and he sings in some really interesting sort of styles, which at times kind of does remind me of an influence maybe picked up by Mike Patton a little bit. Also, his voice really reminds me a lot of Jonathan Davis from Korn as well. But yeah, the music is it's pretty chaotic. I would say it's really tight. I think these guys are definitely going for something and they're making no qualms about going for it. It is what it's set out to be. And I think you have to respect that. I will say this might be something that I would have been more excited about when I was younger. But that being said, I really, really enjoyed listening to this. I'm pretty sure that they probably put on a really great live show, really great performance. I could definitely tell that their heart is in it. And I would say I don't really have much more to say about it other than, I mean, if you're a fan of Deftones, Korn, Faith No More, Incubus, stuff like that. Also, maybe even a little bit of thrash kind of is thrown in there as well. I'm going to say the song True Colors was my favorite one because there's a really interesting drastic vocal change in the middle that really I had to kind of go back and re-listen to it because I just thought it was really cool and really well done. And so yeah. What do you think, Erik?
Yeah, I'm right there with you on most of that. I do think there are two vocalists in the band.
Oh,
On
okay.
Spotify, it says that Johnny Dice and G. Walt are vocalists.
So that might explain
Yeah.
the drastic changes that I'm
Right.
talking about.
Yeah,
Okay.
or
Gotcha.
even done at the same time sometimes. So
Sure.
those probably
Sure.
aren't overdubs. And yeah, it's funny that you said you probably would have been into this at more at a different time, because it does bring up the idea of sort of like revivalism to an extent, which I think we'll probably have to bring up a couple of times in this episode. And it's hard to figure that stuff out. Like, if it's a revival of a revival, especially, it's kind of like, well, doesn't that just mean like negate itself a little bit and it just becomes the thing again, like a double negative? I don't know
Right.
how to explain that. But yeah, this definitely fits into, I don't know, some music that its heyday was a while back. But like when we were talking to Steve Mall on the last episode, that's stuff that he really loves and had a big influence on him. So it's like,
Sure.
Those same things are influencing people now to make music. So it's not really like a revival. It's like truly being inspired by it. It's kind of hard to explain. But anyway, yeah, Safe Space, I thought was really cool. I thought that it took a lot of chances. Musically, it went all over the place. Metalcore, rap metal, alternative metal. One of the songs, No Plastic, was almost like funk. And all of the playing is super tight and exactly what it's supposed to be. And I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but it kind of, the music itself feels almost like a delivery system for the vocals. And I don't want to have that sound dismissive. What I'm trying to say is the music is played so perfectly and tight that it's never distracting. And so it really lets the vocals shine. But yeah, the vocals are cool. Like I said, there's two of them, and they pretty much cover every metal style I can think of. No joke. Like, yeah, a very Mike Patton approach for sure, if not some of the tones. But I also hear like Dillinger Escape Plan with some of the more like hardcore kind of screaming element. But then also it gets growly and low key like Clutch sometimes. It gets pretty and melodic, like the Deftones. It gets kind of funky and rap oriented, kind of like 311. The dichotomy between the really low guttural vocals and like those pretty vocals makes me think of Fear Factory quite a bit. But yeah, like you said, the vocal kind of fry sound of Jonathan Davis for sure. And then yeah, like I said, Patton. But yeah, it's really well done stuff. Very experimental overall. I mean, when you take all those parts separately, it may not seem that it's experimental, but when you put it all together and it happens within every song, you know, they just take a lot of chances and they pull it off. And I don't know, I thought it was really cool, and it was reminiscent of stuff I haven't heard in a long time, and so I welcomed it. And yeah, super cool stuff.
It was also, I just want to say real quick,
Mhm.
it was kind of a breath of fresh air too, to kind of hear it again,
Yeah.
you know, hear that kind of style, and also just being done so well. And also, I'm glad you brought up the groovy elements, because
Mhm.
that's one thing that I neglected to mention in my review. This thing definitely, without a doubt, has a groove to it as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of the Clutch element to it as well. You know,
Yep.
somewhere between 311 and Clutch, I think you end up with the grooviness that's on this. So
Sure. Sure.
yeah, cool stuff. The first record I'm going to talk about is called The House Flies. It's the Glimmer EP, came out this year, it looks like. It was made by A. Riggin of the group, I'm going to mispronounce it, Murnau. Is that how you would say that?
Yeah, I think it is Murnau.
Yeah, whom I've listened to their stuff and like it a lot. And I've
Yeah,
been trying to get it, I've been trying to work it into this show for a long time.
Yeah,
So,
they're fantastic. They actually
Yeah.
played a Muscatine last summer.
oh, really? Yeah,
Mhm.
it's cool stuff. This is quite a bit different, though. I would say this falls somewhere between sort of old school new wave, post punk, maybe some not metal influenced industrial, if that makes any sense. So I'm not really talking about Ministry or KMFDM, but maybe some other things that, you know, maybe more like in a Nine Inch Nails kind of vein. But yeah, the guitars are cool. They're very sparse at times, like just playing kind of angular, disjointed lines. But then they get into this like just sort of full throated shoegaze, epic guitar stuff. And the thing is, it kind of flies under the radar because the synths and the electronic percussion are so prominent that the guitar and the bass, sometimes you don't really notice what they're doing, but it is really, really cool stuff. It's really moody. It's really, I don't know. Yeah, it just had a really cool industrial edge to it that I loved. Really cool synths. The production was awesome. Very intentional arrangements and production. Like every sound fills the space that it's supposed to fill, and it's completely unimpeded by other sounds. It's really sparse and just really well put together. The vocals are delivered in sort of a high and warbly kind of sound, like purposefully kind of shaky and vulnerable, kind of like Brainiac or Flaming Lips, which doesn't seem like it would fit with this style, and it's not really presented that way either, just tonally similar. I would say as far as how it's presented, I think it's very theatrical and like almost gothy, like She Wants Revenge or like Bauhaus or whatever, but mostly like Kevin McMahon, who goes by Prick. vocally it reminded me a lot like of Prick. And I'm sure I've said it 1,000 times. Prick is amazing, and everyone should listen to that as well as the Houseflies. But yeah, I loved it. I think Apple might have been my favorite song. There's a really cool portamento synth on it, like the portamento's set really high, so it just glides like.
Oh, gracious me. Was I raving?
I don't know. It's really good if you're into kind of the lighter side of industrial, or even the like goth stuff. I think you would really enjoy it. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I thought this was really, really cool. I think um, Alex did a really excellent job on this for sure. It definitely is music that creates a an atmosphere to me, or like as they say, a vibe. I immediately just kind of thought of like the dark atmosphere that surrounds like Twin Peaks and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But also, it's mostly just like, yeah, you hear like the programmed drums, guitar, bass, and then there's that huge synth element that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
The vocals, I actually really liked it because it was almost, I don't know, hidden by like this. I don't know if compression's the right word, but yeah, the vocals were almost had this like, I don't want to say buried, but it just had this effect, that this ambience, like a
Mm-hmm.
haunting vocal effect. But at the same time, you could hear it very well. It wasn't like it was completely buried in the mix or anything. It created this vocal effect that I really enjoyed. I think you're spot on with the Prick comparison for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Also, this may sound, I don't know, this may or may not be valid in a lot of other people's minds, but it also, his vocals reminded me a lot of the Mechanical Animals album by Manson.
Right.
Reminded me of like
For sure.
the vocals on that record.
Mm-hmm.
And even I would say the music and the influence. And then this is going to sound a little weird as well. But I also think there were hints of like Connor Oberst in his vocals, as odd as that kind of sounds.
Yeah.
Like almost like there was like a vulnerability to it as well, that and I think maybe when you're describing the warbling sort of effect, maybe that's the reason why I was picking up on something like that. And that's just a tad bit, but there's a lot of emotion in it. It's really dark. It creates a feeling. It creates a lot of emotions, and yeah, I mean the stuff that it kind of put me in mind of a little bit. Pretty much everybody who I mentioned, but also like Bajas, I would say a little bit of New Order, maybe a touch of Two-Way Army, The Cure, and maybe some stuff that I've heard by Juju. Am I saying that right?
Juju? Yeah.
Juju. Yeah. Really fantastic stuff. I definitely should check it out for sure. I think if you're a fan of like goth music, dark music, moody, atmospheric music, that's all here. So then the next thing that we're going to talk about is a solo project from somebody who goes by the name of Jacob fucking Martin. The name of this group is Mocktag, and it's 74 West, and it's from the Quad Cities. And I assume it's pretty sure it's a solo project, because on the Bandcamp and all the info that I found out about it, it seems like he plays everything on this. But the best way that I can describe this music is I think it's just really well done, quirky, sort of poppy alternative punk songs, or just like quirky pop songs through a punk rock filter. There's definitely like some start stop rhythms in parts of it that almost kind of, to me, give it sort of a DC Discord influence, like the hardcore, the post hardcore. So we're talking like Q and Not You, and maybe a little bit of Shudder to Think, and a little bit of Fugazi and stuff like that. But at the same time, I would say that it's at times very catchy, sort of rock and roll. And one of the things that I really like about it is it's kind of hard for me to pin down exactly. some of the structures and some of the, I guess, for lack of a better way to describe it, zaniness of it, and sort of the way that some of the songs kind of have a herky jerkiness about it, reminds me of the band The Adverts, or like Jay Retard at times. And then other times it's very, I don't know, early Replacements. I think Jake's voice is fantastic for this stuff, and it's just really interesting. And so, yeah, it kind of also definitely has like that solo, I guess, sort of bedroom pop element to it a little bit too. But I mean, I think it's pretty like heavy, not like in a metal sense or even a hardcore punk sense, but there definitely is like some distorted guitars and stuff like that. And it also kind of has a feeling of spontaneity that I really enjoy. It's really, really fun stuff. And I would say that if you're a fan of that kind of stuff that I just mentioned, guided by voices, I'd say even a little bit of Nirvana, Sebado, Fugazi, Superchunk, Replacements, but then also, as I mentioned earlier, the Adverts, a little bit of a garagey side. It's not too garagey, but yeah, overall, I just think this is just quirky, really well done, quirky indie rock, I guess, is maybe the best, or indie punk would be the best way that I would describe it. And that's one of the things I really like about it, again, is that I can't necessarily put my finger on it. I don't know. Maybe Erik has some better descriptive words than I do. What do you think, Erik?
Yeah. So I actually did sort of think of it a little differently than you, I feel like. For me, this was very much, this is what I was talking about earlier with the revival. So to me, this was very similar to like the post-punk revival of the early, like, I don't know, 2000s. I don't know. I guess I'll give my list of things that reminded me of first, and then I'll go through that. But yeah, it reminded me of that indie rock post-punk revival. So like the Strokes, Hot Heat, things like that. That's really what I heard in there a lot. That's not to say it's derivative by any means. I thought it was really cool, really great songs, like overwhelmingly great songs. I was pretty shocked and surprised by just how seamless and mature the songwriting was. The production's really crisp, glossy. It's rhythmically really diverse, even within the same song. Like I think Dan said start, stop. I would say it more like it just changes instantly. A different rhythm, a different part, the same part with a different rhythm. Like it's always moving. A lot of cool song styles. And I think this was something that was really popular with that post-punk revival stuff. So you get sort of like rumbas in there and like pop punk and just like rock and roll. And it all lives in the same world. It's like whatever you want it to be. It's super good, continuously engaging. Like I don't think you could ever get bored listening to any of it. Like you don't have time. It just keeps changing and being amazing. The only thing I'll say about it, and this is, I don't want to sound like some old man trying to tell people how to do things.
I just want attention.
But I feel like this deserves a better cover than it has on Bandcamp. It's just sort of a handwritten note kind of thing. And that's cool. I like that sort of irreverence or whatever. But I just think that all the work that went into this and how amazing it is, like it deserves an image to go along with it. So anyway, our next record, this comes to us from Pokey's Records. It's called Thought Wrong. I believe this is self-titled. Just came out. It's awesome. I mean, really, I loved it. Like loved it. It might be the best kind of hardcore kind of thing I've heard in a little while for me, based on my tastes, right? So I think it's important to reiterate sometimes that our opinions are our opinions.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
So don't take it the wrong way. I like your band too. But just for me, this really checks a lot of boxes. So it's I would say it's old school hardcore. I would say that it verges on skate punk. I would say it doesn't quite get to crossover or thrash, but it is in this kind of very small realm where it's hardcore and it's like I said, kind of like skate punk, but it's like kind of more crushing, a little more brutal. But yeah, it's fast at times. It's crushing. The guitar tones are awesome. The bass is doing exactly what it's supposed to do for this kind of stuff. The guitars are chuggy and brutal. There's also some other crazy guitar noise happening at times. It's very rhythmic. I loved all the tom work on here. Really nice circle pit centric breakdowns, if that makes any sense. Like it's very much that style of hardcore to me, with just the wide open hi-hats, just going pretty wild. Some blast beats, breakdowns, like I said. I don't know. I can't really say enough about it. If you're a fan of old school skate punk hardcore, it's phenomenal, and it sounds exactly like it should, and it's really well done. I love the vocal delivery. It's really it has an urgency to it. It has a kind of a fed upness to it. It's a little frustrated, and I think it works really well. So as far as things that it sounded like to me, suicidal, like vocally especially, but even just some of the parts of the songs, I guess you would say, movements or whatever, it kind of reminded me a lot of suicidal, but also circle jerks at times. And like the heavier side of this stuff, though, like you could say Black Flag and things like that, but it's going to be the kind of the heavier, slower, kind of crushing parts of that. So Corrosion of Conformity, things like that. I just loved it from the first note till the end. I was just like in love with it. Aww. Yeah, what do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Eric, you just pretty much said it all. I'm pretty much almost verbatim, almost what you said. It's really punishing from beginning to end, really short and to the point. And there's a lot of elements that kind of remind me of, I would say straight up, it is old school sounding metallic hardcore punk for sure. There's some elements that kind of remind me of some of the Youth Crew stuff that was coming out of like the 80s. Like it's just, yeah, it's just, I would say this probably is my favorite hardcore band that so far that has come out on Pokies. And that's no disrespect to all the other ones, because this label has been killing it. I mean, every release that has come out has literally been just amazing. And I think it's exciting to me that we got a record label like this in 2023 that's just putting out some really great tapes, mostly hardcore punk, but not afraid to experiment by putting out something like Moody Marlin as well. But this was just it was 4 songs of just pure terror. It really just kind of knocked you down and never let you get back up. It just heavy as hell. I mean, and yeah, I would agree with you. Suicidal tendencies, that's one of the first things I wrote down. I think it also reminded me a lot of Void. There actually is some really great guitar work on this as well. The riffs are just, I think, outstanding. And when you mentioned circle jerks, and then you kind of said, yeah, you could say Black Flag. That's also, I wrote down Black Flag, but I specified My War. You know, Bane. I heard a little bit of something like Bane on here. Inside Out, which is Zach De La Roca from Rage Against the Machine's old hardcore band that I mentioned on here before. And then also like Gorilla Biscuits, Youth of Today, all kinds of stuff. I mean, it really, this was just an exercise in just really good, intense, old school hardcore. And also the album cover, I think, is amazing.
I was just about to mention that. Yeah, it's like a take on American Gothic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
one thing I was going to say too, and I didn't put this in my review because I didn't want to turn anyone off. But I will say, when the guitars are really chugging along, the tone that it reminded me of the most was old school Anthrax. Like
yes,
Scott Ian's rhythm guitars, a very similar tone. And some people that might sound like they're, I don't know, it depends on what you think of Anthrax. I freaking love Anthrax and I love that tone. And so for me to say that, it's an amazing guitar tone. And it's
and I think
all throughout this. So
I think Anthrax, more than any of the big four thrash bands, had the most hardcore sounding back, like a hardcore background. Like
right.
I would agree with that for sure, because there is a lot of like thrashy kind of chuggy parts on here too. There really is like a metallic element here for sure. Really fantastic stuff. Once again, I mean, I kind of feel like at this point, Pokey's records can't go wrong. Everything they put out has been amazing.
Doing great.
Absolutely. And then the other label that I'm becoming very familiar with out of Des Moines that I'm really liking everything I've heard on as 5CM Recordings, who put out the full length from this group, who we reviewed their EP a while back. But they just put out their full length, which was recorded at Flat Black Studios by Luke Tweedy. It is the guitar drum duo of Moscow Puzzles. And the name of this record is Cicadas Are Sensitive to Parallel Lines. So they're a two-piece from Des Moines. The guitarist is Tobin Hoover, and the drums is Tony Andrews, I think. I apologize if I'm saying that wrong. Now, this is a full length, but there is only 5 songs on here. But they're all pretty lengthy. And this just came out about a month ago. Yeah, I feel like this is just continuing on the path of just really good, raw, but sort of natural sounding rock instrumental music, post-rock instrumental music. There's a lot of improvisation maybe going on around, this time around, maybe more so than the EP. The riffs are extremely melodic. The guitar tones are fantastic. There's, some tremolo and reverb going on. But I also just really like the way that the guitars and the drums sound. I think the production is fantastic. A lot of really interesting song structures, and sometimes the way that the songs are kind of approached reminds me a little bit of jazz, a little bit, because I do kind of feel like it's definitely, they definitely, kind of wrote some stuff, and it's sort of, I guess, for lack of a better way to describe it, calculated and tight, but I kind of feel like they veer off into some, I don't want to say jamming. It's not like it's sound, it's not, they're far from a jam band. I kind of hear them getting lost in the music while they're recording this. And I think that's a fantastic thing. I really like the sort of less is more appeal of this as well, because they are just a 2-piece. And I think there's also very much, in a much different way, but also kind of similar to the Houseflies, I think that there's kind of a cinematic element to this as well, but in a different way. But mostly it's just really good guitar work, really good drumming, and makes for a really sort of atmospheric instrumental indie rock record. I would say that if you like doobiness yet quirkiness of Slint, Cancer Conspiracy, Tristeza, Juno, maybe a little bit of like Sunny Day Real Estate musically as well. I think that this is the record for you, man. And I really, really enjoyed it a lot. And I also just want to give a shout out to Moscow Puzzles because they have been huge supporters of the podcast. And so thank you very much for creating this music. And now on to Erik. What'd you think, Erik?
Yeah, I liked it a lot. It was a couple years ago, actually, when we reviewed the EP. I know that sounds crazy, but
That is crazy.
because I looked back at my notes from that episode 54, I believe.
Wow. Hard to believe that this is going to be
Yeah.
what, 94?
I think that's right.
Wow.
The year I graduated. That's the first non-lie I've ever told on this show. I'm going to edit that out. No one gets to know anything about my real life.
Everything is untruthful on this show.
Okay. So yeah, I thought it was really good. I think I've met Tony and Tobin a couple of times in life. They are both cool people. But yeah, it's really long, kind of immersive post-rock, right? And that's sort of the surface description of the whole thing. Because in reality, I was hearing something a little different this time around than last time on the EP. It seemed a little more sparse and raw, like kind of a little less cinematic, I thought, than the last thing and most other post-rock. Like it is something different. I found it to be a little more like post-punk sounding, if that makes any sense. Like it's like post-punk sounds in a post-rock presentation. I know that's long-winded, but
yeah.
So like the parts go on for a long time. I think there's a lot of looping happening. Otherwise, I don't know how they did it unless it was a lot of overdubs. But yeah, so there are a lot of layers and things like that. But most of it is clean guitar, like it does have a lot of effects in places, but it's never like washed out or like, I don't know how to describe that. Like it is atmospheric because of the atmosphere they present and manufacture, but not necessarily like it's calm or mellow or, just floaty or something. Like this is all very deliberate. So very tight, intentional playing. Yeah, the parts will go on for a while and then it'll just switch on a dime and that they know what's happening. And it's really pretty amazing. But yeah, like I said, more closer to post-punk sounds to me, like Television guitars or like Sonic Youth or whatever, but just stretched out longer. Yeah, they're not afraid to explore some new territory. There's some dissonant kind of plotting rhythms and stuff, but then, in the next minute or so, it's going to be kinetic and really pretty and has a lot of energy. And so it goes a lot of different places. But yeah, things that I also thought Slint, like I said already, Television, Sonic Youth. And then as far as the post-rock side of it, maybe like Explosions in the Sky or Mogwai. But yeah, I found it to be, I don't know how to describe it. It was more like instrumental rock than it was post-rock, if that makes sense. Like, I think to me, it felt like it had way more to do with like Don Caballero than it does Godspeed You Black Emperor. And that's a weird take, I know, but
yeah,
that's what I felt.
The rawness definitely is there. And I'm going to just say that that's one of the things that I'm really liking about the direction that this group is in. But I don't know, maybe like, I kind of want to go back and explain what I was talking about when I talked about the jam element to it.
Yeah.
It definitely sounds like they knew, like what you were saying, Erik, that they knew what was coming. But I guess maybe I was sort of thinking to myself that like, if I was playing this music, it would be hard for me to not get lost in it.
Yeah.
And I think that's I don't know. I kind of hear a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I hear a little bit of them maybe just getting lost in the music a little bit, because I think it would be really
Yeah.
difficult for you not to, if you're playing like this sort of
I agree.
moody instrumental
Mhm.
sort of rock. And so I want to
Yeah.
make sure that nobody misunderstands me as trying to say that this is jam music, and I don't want to
Right.
turn
Well,
anybody into a certain direction, because this definitely is not jam music. This
Yeah.
is really tightly controlled, like you said, instrumental rock music with definitely that has like a post-punk element to it for sure. It's
yeah.
fantastic stuff.
There's noodling, but it's controlled noodling.
Exactly. Yeah, controlled noodling. I like that a lot. I just wanted to, I guess I wanted to elaborate more on what I was trying to get at there, because I was struggling with trying to get that out, how I was trying to think about that, you know.
Yeah. And I agree. I don't think personally, I don't know. I think how we had the discussion about using the term pop music sometimes feels wrong. Sometimes
Right.
using jam band also feels wrong.
It does.
But
Yeah.
you know, a lot of people like that stuff. I like some of it. And
Sure.
so, you know, it's not always a bad thing, but I do think this is a little more intentional and distinct than a lot of jam band music. So
Absolutely. So yeah, that was my thing, is I just don't want you to think that I'm trying to say that they're a jam band, because
Right.
it definitely
Mhm.
is not that by
Yeah.
any means.
for
In
sure.
case there are any non-jam band fans listening.
Jam
But if
band
there
fans.
if there are any jam band fans, also listen to this.
Yeah,
'cause
I think
you'll like it.
actually you'd like it anyway. So.
Yeah, I think everyone who's listening to this should listen to everything that we say.
I agree with that. Yeah. Including
Because it's all
the single of the week, which is
Absolutely.
also local because this is the roundup. It's a single by a group, Good Morning Midnight. The songs are The Loner, and the B side of the single would be United States' Mind Control. Good Morning Midnight's a project of Charlie Cacciatore. He's been doing it for a long time. The other players, Griffin Clark, Aaron Knight, and Cole Hadsky. But yeah, I really like this a lot. It felt a little different than the other Good Morning Midnight stuff I've heard, and maybe that's not accurate, but it felt that way. It's very power pop oriented. I didn't want to have that be what I landed on as far as a descriptor, but it just is. It's very like power pop, but also kind of pop rock, classic indie, things like that. It still takes a lot of chances, and so I don't want it to sound like this is just mindless fun or something like that. It's really great stuff. But yeah, The Loner, really just great sounding, great performances. I love all the extra vocal embellishments. It's like every third or fourth word, there's something that happens to the vocals or a background vocal to lift it up or support it. It's really cool. The guitar solo at the end is phenomenal. It comes in with this feedback that goes on way too long, and it almost sounds like a synthesizer. And then you realize it was guitar feedback. It's very surprising. I probably should have left that spoiler out. But anyway, great song. The United States' Mind Control is also a really fun example of that power poppy sound. It gets a little wilder with the guitars and way more wild with the vocals. This one also has a really interesting ending too. I won't spoil it. But yeah, I thought it was really fun, and I thought it was really well done, and just a clean sound, clean production and songwriting. Overall, I'm just going to name some things that I hope they're not offensive. I don't know how else to do that except to tell you what I heard in there. You know what I mean? So, Cheap Trick, Andrew WK, The Replacements. This is going to sound weird, but like Rick Springfield or maybe Billy Squire. I don't know, something in that realm. Tripping Daisy to an extent with sort of the weirdness that happens. But yeah, that's how I came out of it. I just thought these are really poppy songs that are also rock oriented and just really fun. And yeah, I had the loner in my head for like 2 days, so it's great. What do you think, Dan?
I'm pretty much in alignment with everything you said. Again, I would say this is some of the most rockin' stuff I've heard in a while. It has I also kind of think somewhat of a glam influence as well. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like I wouldn't say that this is I could almost hear like some of this guitar work, especially on the loner, more so the loner. I could hear like CC DeVille tones a little bit. You know what I
Mm.
mean?
Yeah, sure.
A little bit. It's just really rocking. Yeah, I mean, I would classify this as just really good Midwest rock. I haven't gotten a chance to listen to the other Good Morning
Mm-hmm.
Midnight stuff. I'm totally in agreement with you on Cheap Trick. I think Cheap Trick is definitely a great comparison here. Definitely the replacements. Couple of groups that you didn't mention that this really reminded me of. One is the Hold Steady,
Mm.
like, and then Soul Asylum. This reminded me a lot of Soul
Nice.
Asylum. Now
Yeah.
that might be I don't know, that might be a stretch for some people, but I really do think that because Soul Asylum has that sort of old school element to them as well, like just old
Mhm.
school power pop element as well. And then I would also say, and this might be an even bigger stretch, but I would even say there's some elements of Van Halen here as well.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just really fun melodic stuff. Now, the second song I think actually takes quite a U-turn.
Mhm.
I can see how it's the same band, but it's a lot punkier. And when I say like punkier, it's not they don't turn into a hardcore band or anything like that. I would say like that song, it still has all those things that we talked about. I mean, the Replacements, after
Mhm.
all, like had some faster songs. But I would say that United States is Mind Control maybe has all of those same things, but then adds in a little bit of Husker Du and a little bit of maybe the Stooges to it as well,
Mhm.
or something like that. So really good stuff. I my only complaint about it is that it was only 2 songs, so that
Yeah.
means I'm gonna have to go back and listen to more stuff because I'm really if they're capable of switching it up on just these 2 songs to
Mhm.
that degree, I can't wait to hear what they can do with a full length album or even an
Nice.
EP. So
Mhm.
really, really good stuff. Great job. Good morning, midnight.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow. We really talked about some stuff.
We talked about some stuff and
Wow.
yeah.
You know, these local roundups are super fun. I think we could do as much local stuff as we can
Yeah.
and, you know, and never really be running out of stuff. So
I think
if
you're
you
right.
are listening and you want us to talk about your band and listen to your music, just send us a message for real and we'll
Yeah.
do it.
I mean, you
'cause
guys,
we want to know.
it may take us a little bit to get to it, unfortunately, but in
Mhm.
all honesty, guys, all of you listeners out there, for real, just send us a message. And if you got something that either you're in a band or a friend
Mhm.
of you happens to have a band or a friend of yours has a band or something, let us know about it. And I mean, we're not just talking just Iowa either. Illinois, Eric and
Yeah.
I talked about it. Illinois, Omaha,
Wisconsin,
Wisconsin,
Minnesota.
Minneapolis, Madison. Yeah.
So,
We're
wow.
happy to
There
listen
we
to
go.
we're happy to listen to music as much as possible, and we want to try and keep our friends and people who we don't even know making music around Iowa because that's what keeps things
Yeah.
exciting.
And also, don't be scared off if you are making music that you think might be too accessible or something.
Right.
Don't feel that way. We listen to everything. So
Yeah, we listen to everything, and if you're playing in like something that sounds like top 40 pop radio and you're from Iowa, we want to hear you. We're not just going to be reviewing avant-garde noise music the whole time.
well, I mean, if it were up to me,
Yeah. We're just saying that we're willing to give anything a chance.
Yep,
For
absolutely. So I guess wow, we really took care of fucking business there.
We really did. There should be some sort of expletive at the end of this, I feel. for
Yeah, because
sure.
we took this way too seriously.
we really I know it's out of it feels out of character, doesn't
I
it?
know. I don't like
Like
it. But I mean, just so everyone knows, we're not pandering. It's not like that. It's just we really do enjoy doing this and enjoy hearing from you guys. But
Absolutely 100%.
we're not going to be like, don't forget to
Smash the subscribe button. Smash.
we're not going to be like that, because
right.
that's not who we are. For real, in a legitimate way, it's super fun to do this, and we'd love to hear from you. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
100%.
And with that, fuck shit's not bullshit farts. Oh God. Well, I don't know. I think we did a good job.
That's a wrap. Thank you for listening, and yeah.
Yeah. All right. See y'all next week.
Because I learned the hard way that my interests very rarely are gonna align with the interests of other people,